Welcome back to the Leadership Lab, a study in personal development. Today, I'm going to be discussing leadership emergence. So let's ask a question, and one that's particularly uncomfortable for a lot of people that romanticize leadership. And that's because we love the idea that leadership is a teachable skill and that anyone can become a great leader with enough time, enough training, and enough effort. And while I generally believe that there is some truth to that, there also is some truth to that each person has a ceiling on their leadership capabilities based on some things that are really hard to change. And that's a really hard thing to swallow. And I think it makes people ignore some uncomfortable truths. And that is in real world settings, especially ones where no one is officially a charge, at least at first, there are certain people, certain types of people that will consistently rise to the top, and it doesn't seem to be random. So today we're going to dive into a direct and data driven study on leadership emergence, and it's going to present a message that most people are not going to want to hear. So in 1998, researchers by the name of Jeffrey Smith and Roseanne Foti took a new approach to an old question in leadership emergence. And they asked, why do some people naturally emerge as leaders in group settings, even when there are no titles or ranks assigned? They proposed that instead of looking at individual traits or characteristics at one specific point in time, like intelligence or confidence, that we should consider personality patterns in our study of leadership emergence. And their hypothesis was as follows. It's not one trait that predicts leadership emergence, it's the combination of three. First was dominance, which they characterize as the assertive drive to take charge. Second is general self-efficacy, which they characterize as the belief that you can handle whatever is thrown at you. And third is general intelligence, which they characterize as the cognitive horsepower to problem solve in real time. And they wanted to know if an individual is high in all three capabilities, do you emerge as a leader more often than anyone else? So here's how they tested this theory. They recruited 160 male college students and assessed them on those three traits: dominance, intelligence, and self-efficacy. And then they formed small 4-person groups. Each group included one on the high profile, which they abbreviate as HHH, someone that was high in all three traits, another person, which was LLL, or low in all three traits, and two others with mixed profiles, all within a single group. Each group was given a Lego-based business simulation where they were assigned to build products, make sales, earn a profit. No leaders assigned, just 45 minutes to organize and get it done. After the exercise, group members then ranked who they saw as their leader. There were no titles, no instructions, just organic group dynamics and perception. And here's what they found. The individuals that were high in all three traits, the HHH group, high in dominance and high in intelligence and high in self-efficacy, emerged as leaders more than any other individual in any other group. Conversely, the individuals that were LLL, that were low in each of the three categories, were consistently rated as least likely to lead. And in fact, the HHH group also outperformed those who were high in just two of the traits. So if you're high in dominance and high in intelligence, but low in self-belief, it seems that you're still going to fall behind, at least compared to those people that are high in all three. You're high in intelligence, high in confidence, but you don't have the edge of self-efficacy, you still won't be the top dog. It's not an additive thing, they discovered. It's a synergistic interaction of all three traits that seem to predict who is going to emerge organically as a leader. And their evidence and the results seem to indicate that it's not a small difference either. The group factor of the HHH individuals accounted for over 44% of the variance in the leadership perception of the other individuals. And 44% variance is a huge deal in behavioral science. So what does this say about leadership? Well, it says that when people talk about natural leaders, they have a point. It suggests that when we say someone who just has it or just gets it when it comes to leadership, we're subconsciously picking up on patterns like this, even if we don't realize it consciously. And that rubs people the wrong way because people want to believe that they can develop certain things about themselves. People want leadership to be fair. We want it to be earned, and we don't want it to be something that is just emerges from special people. But unfortunately for those people, this study pushes us to confront an uncomfortable truth. And that is leadership perception is also pattern-based. It's not just performance or merit-based. You might be brilliantly intelligent, you might be a kind and courteous person, and you might even have great ideas, but if you don't project the right combination of traits, assertiveness, competence, confidence, you're not going to be seen as a leader. So this study goes against a lot of modern leadership training philosophy, which is another reason why it's going to make people uncomfortable when they hear this. So much of leadership training, and certainly is commensurate with my experience, is listen more, be collaborative, lead from behind, connect with your people more. And those things are all true and important, but they don't tell the whole story, particularly in leaderless groups, and particularly, it seems, in male dominated groups. People seem to default to instinct more than we want to admit. And based on evolutionary psychology, instinct often takes the form of looking for decisiveness or dominance, looking for mental clarity or intelligence, and looking for confidence, which is self-efficacy. All three things that this study identified. And it raises some tough questions. One of which is, are we wasting time trying to train low trait individuals for high visibility, complex leadership roles? Another is, can people really change their core pattern through development alone? And should we be selecting leaders based on pattern alignment from the start? Here's where it gets even more contentious. This study only included men. Why? Well, at least according to the authors, prior to studies done in 1998, showed that mixed sex groups, dominant women were often still not perceived as leaders, even when they behaved the same as their dominant male counterparts. Why? Well, dominance, it seems, in women triggers different follower reactions. And the literature, since this study was put out, makes it really clear that this is true for both female and male followers. This doesn't necessarily mean that women can't lead. What it does seem to indicate is that the pattern that works for men does not necessarily translate in the same way for women who are seeking to emerge as leaders. So what's the leadership pattern emergence for women? Well, we don't necessarily fully know yet, and it's certainly a critical area for future research and follow-on discussions. However, since this is an old study that was done in 1998, and we've learned a few things since then, one promising area of research seems to suggest that even in male-dominated groups, women still can emerge as leaders if the personality of that group will facilitate it. And what that means is that if the group's general personality is more extroverted, even in a male-dominated group, that women will emerge as leaders just as much and sometimes even more than men. And the reason that this is the case is that highly extroverted groups, particularly male extroverted groups, switch to more communal characteristics as opposed to dominance characteristics. They're more open with their communication. There's more dialogue. There's more general sociability, all things that women tend to thrive in on average more so than men, who seem to prefer dominance and competence hierarchies. And so if you're interested in that topic, check out my previous stream on female leadership, which will be pinned in the video description. So in terms of practical application or implications based on this study, if you're a coach, if you're a trainer, if you're a team leader, here's what you can take away from this. First is you should be assessing patterns, not just perceived potential. If someone's not emerging as a leader, look at the blend of their traits. Ask yourself, are they missing one of these three? If people aren't selecting you as their leader in a group setting, ask yourself, are you missing one of the three? Are you low in confidence? Are you low in self-efficacy? Are you low in dominance, particularly if you're in a male-dominated group? Second is that confidence training is going to make a difference. Now, since general self-efficacy was a factor in this study, even more so than dominance was in terms of how much variance it took up in terms of leadership emergence, helping people, including yourself, build mastery and win small battles often is what's going to build that self-efficacy. There's a quote by Alex Hormozy that says something to the effect of, confidence comes from building irrefutable evidence that you are who you say you are. And so if you're lacking confidence, if your people are lacking confidence, start small, build skills, and then, like he says, do so much volume that would be unreasonable for you to be successful. Third, it is not prudent to force leadership onto people with low trait patterns. That doesn't mean that they will never become leaders. It means that with their current disposition, forcing leadership onto people is probably not going to work out well. You can develop skills over time, but you can't fake perception, at least not easily, and certainly not over the long term. So if you're not a dominant person, build your confidence through volume. If you're lacking self-efficacy, pursue experience in your industry. And if you're not as intelligent as some people are, read as much as you can get your hands on. Seek mentorship, reflect, update your mental models, and accumulate knowledge and clarity of thought, because that is a better substitute for intelligence than doing nothing. And lastly, at least in a group design with hierarchy, not determined immediately, you can expect leaders to emerge organically. You can expect them to emerge fast, and you can expect that it might not always be fair, and it might not always be the most competent person or the person that is most suited to leadership to emerge organically. So what's the takeaway from all this? Well, leadership emergence isn't just about who wants to lead. It's also not about who is best suited to lead over the long term. It's also about who fits the pattern that people instinctively trust. And that instinct is going to be largely based on evolutionary psychology. And that might not sit well with people, but ignoring it doesn't make it untrue. And so if we want to develop better leaders, and if we want to develop more diverse ones on top of that, we need to stop pretending emergence from organic groups is exclusively meritocratic. It's also psychological, it's also perceptual, and at least according to this study, it's also patterned. It's also important to remember that leadership emergence isn't the same as leadership performance. So don't conflate the two. Just because someone who emerges as a leader organically doesn't necessarily mean that they will be the most effective one to lead once they are in that position. It might be, but it's not a guarantee. Leading well and performing as a leader requires a largely related but different set of traits and skills than it takes to emerge as a leader. And so if you're interested in something like that, look up the stream I did on the cognitive skills of successful leaders, and that link will also be in the description. So if this grounded, research-backed leadership insight is your thing like it is mine, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, drop a comment. Tell me what you think about the born versus made discussion. If you want to work with me personally, fill out the leadership intake form that's linked in the video. And you can also find me on Instagram and LinkedIn and Facebook. Until the next time, catch you guys soon.